Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to do the upcycled hoodie, kind of like this one that I have here with the pocket and the hood. So if you want to learn how to do that, go ahead and follow along. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to lay out your hoodie, and you kind of want to figure out where that design is going to end up. And you want to see if you're going to like where that design is, and make sure that you're not going to be cutting over any seams like these. Like this is kind of cutting it close here. So just when I cut, I'm going to make sure I cut a little bit further up so that I make sure I have enough room for that pattern piece. You also want to make sure that there's enough length at the bottom for the whole pattern. You don't want to be cutting into your waistband here because we're going to be using that. So make sure that you have enough room. That doesn't include the waistband when you're cutting this out. Alright, so now that you know where your design is going to end up, we're going to cut it out. You can use regular scissors. I like to use my automatic scissors here. They work great. So you're just going to start cutting at the seams. As you can see here, just cut all of those seams off. Alright, so now that you have that cut out, you're going to take your seam ripper and you're going to unstitch the pocket here. And start from the corner here. You want to be very careful. You want to make sure that you're only unstitching the thread that's holding it together and not putting a hole in your fabric. So just start unstitching little by little, being very careful. So there's a couple ways to go about doing the hood. I'm going to show you the easiest way that I know how to do it. If you want to use the pattern and follow the pattern, go for it. I just wanted to keep it simple for those of you that are beginners. So grab a hood that fits your child pretty good. I know this is a drastic size between these two, but this is just what I had on hand. But you're going to lay that hood that fits your child good on top of the other hood, and you're going to mark kind of where that hood ends on both sides. Okay, so now that you have those two markings, you'll just cut off the bottom of lining up those markings. Sorry, I got excited and didn't cut it off, but you'll cut off the bottom. And then as you can see here, the other hood is a little wider. And what we'll do is we'll kind of scrunch up the back of it to make it fit a little better, but you'll see how that works. Okay, so now that you've taken everything apart, you should have a pocket piece, your two cuffs, your hood here, your two sleeves, your waistband, and then your front and your back piece. Alright, so now you can start cutting out your pattern pieces. I'm just going to line it up here where I like it, and then go ahead and start cutting it out. So lay out your back piece, and you're going to cut out your back pattern piece. Then for your sleeves, the most important thing about the sleeves, especially for this particular pattern, is they are going to be cut opposites. So I usually like to cut one of my fabrics with my fabric facing up, and then when I cut the next one, I will make sure that my fabric is facing down. So now go ahead and cut out those two sleeves opposites. Okay, so now for your cuffs, you're going to take your cuff and you're going to open it up, cutting it at the seam. Alright, so now you're going to lay it up where your pattern is. As you can see here, I'm probably not going to have that much fabric, and I'm going to be just short of that pattern piece. I'm just going to go with it. It usually works out just fine here. Your two options would be to just use this and go with what you have, or you can use a different fabric for your cuffs if you feel like you want to make sure that that pattern piece fits perfectly. Okay, so here I'm going to unstitch the seam. I need to preserve as much as I can of this fabric because I don't have as much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unstitch it instead of cutting it open. If I have enough, I will just cut it open at the seam with my scissors or with my automatic scissors, but you do lose a little bit of that fabric. So instead of cutting it open and losing that 1/2 inch, I'm going to unstitch it so that I have as much as possible. So go ahead and start unstitching it. Okay, now that it's unstitched, it will look like this, and now you can just cut it out as best possible for those cuffs. Okay, now for the waistband, we're going to be doing basically the same thing we did with the cuffs. We're going to open it up at the seam, and then we're going to see what we have here, how much fabric we're going to need, and how much if we're going to be just shy of it. So I kind of just lay it flat and then flip it over and kind of see where that will end up. As you can see here, it's going to be a little short of what I need for the fabric pattern, but I'm just going to go with it. So same thing, I'm going to unstitch the sewn side, and then I'm going to open it up and cut out my pattern piece. Alright, now that I've unstitched it, I am laying it flat here, cut it out, and like I said, it's going to be a little short. I'm going with it. And then for your pocket, go ahead and lay out your pocket piece and cut it out just like normal. Okay, now that you're done cutting everything out, you should have your waistband here. You'll have your 2 cuffs, your pocket piece, your 2 sleeves, and then your front and your back. Now we're going to start sewing it up. So grab your pocket piece first. What you're going to do is you're going to prepare something on the other side. We're going to those sides, we're going to fold them in about a 1/2 inch, and we're going to clip it. You'll just go ahead and sew along these folds here. Okay, so I went ahead and used my cover stitch for this. You can use a zigzag stitch or whatever stitch you would like to use to finish those and sew them together. So this is what I used here on my cover stitch, and it's just folded over and sewn. Alright, so now we're going to add it to the front piece. First we're going to fold in the top and the sides about a 1/2 inch like we did for the other sides. So fold that top about 1/2 inch and clip it. And then you're going to do the same thing with your smaller sides at the bottom. So fold those in and clip. Okay, now that that's done, you are going to lay it down to where you want it to be. You're going to bring that bottom of the pocket down to the edge of the bottom of the shirt. Just like that, and then you're going to pin that in place. I usually use regular pins for this because clips won't work that well. Alright, so go ahead and take those pins and start pinning it in place. Alright, so once that is pinned in place, you're going to sew across these 2 edges and the top. The bottom will be sewn together when you put on that waistband, so don't worry about that. So just the 2 sides and the top. I'm actually not adding the pocket to this, I just wanted to show you how it would be done if we were. But for the next part, you're going to take your front piece and your 2 sleeves and your back piece. And you're going to lay them out flat, kind of on top and on the sides like this. So your front piece, your back piece, and your 2 sides, your side sleeves. And then one thing you want to make sure is that your sleeves are on the correct side when you're sewing them. And how you do that is with the top here. So as you can see, the sleeves kind of curve up. The top of it goes from here and then curves up a little bit. Smaller, taller. Same here. That's the smaller side here, and it curves up to the top. So those 2 pieces are attached to the back. And then the smaller peaks are sewn to the front piece. That will make a little bit more sense once we start doing it. Alright, so grab your sleeves and your front piece, and you're going to make sure that you have the lower slope side, and you're going to flip it over and attach it to the front side here. Alright, so the armpit sides are together, and then that lower peak and the front peak are going to be together, just like that. Same thing with the other side, flip that over and match up those two edges. Alright, so now they should look a little like this, and now you're just going to sew across both of those sides. Okay, so now that you've sewn both of those sleeves onto the sides, they're going to look like this, and now we're going to attach the back piece. So the back piece is going to be attached to those higher peaks, and you're just going to take that back piece and you're going to place it on one of the sleeves with the right sides of the fabric together. And then you're going to match up those edges and clip them in place. Okay, now bring over that other side and match it up with your other side of that sleeve and pin it together. Alright, so now just sew across both of those edges like you did for the front piece. Alright, and now that you have that sewn together, it will look something like this. Okay, so now you're going to bring that back piece and flip it over and match it up with the front piece. I usually just start by lining up the ends here and clip, and then matching up the armpit seam here, and then matching up the bottom seam. And then you can add a little bit more clips just to make it easier when you're sewing. And same thing to the other side. Alright, once you have those clipped, now you're just going to go ahead and sew down both of those sides. Alright, so now that that's done, it will look like this. Now we're going to add the cuffs to the sweater. So grab your two cuffs. You're going to open them up, and you are going to fold it in half long ways and clip. Same thing with your other one. And now you will just sew down both of these sides. Okay, so now you're going to take it and you're going to open it and kind of fold it over itself with the wrong sides of the fabric together. Sorry, I kind of got out of frame, but basically it's folded. You can't see those seams anymore because you have folded them inside. Okay, so now grab a clip and clip where that seam is, and then you're going to kind of lay your cuff down flat so that you can get an even side of that cuff. Okay, now you have two even sides, so now you're going to grab those two and you're going to bring them into the middle. Okay, once those two are in the middle, you're going to mark the two other sides. Okay, so now you have 4 equal sides of this cuff, and you'll do the same thing with your other cuff. Okay, so now grab your sleeve. You're going to lay it flat and mark the seam or the edge right across the seam. So now you have 2 equal sides. Bring those 2 into the middle and then mark those 2 other sides. Alright, so now you should have 4 equal sides of that sleeve, just like you do for your cuff. So now what you'll do is you're going to grab your cuff and you're going to find that seam, and then you're going to match it up with the seam of your sleeve. Bring that sleeve inside, or that cuff inside the sleeve, and match up those seams. Okay, so now you're just going to go around and match up the other 3 corners or sides of this cuff and sleeve. Okay, so now that they're all matched up equally, you are going to sew it. As you can see, the cuff is always going to be smaller than the sleeve, which is completely normal. You're just going to give it a little bit of a stretch when you're sewing so that everything matches up evenly. Alright, so grab it here and kind of place it under your machine in an open spot, and then start to sew a little bit. Okay, you just want to readjust a lot. So sew a little bit, stop, make sure that you're grabbing all of those layers, and make sure that you're stretching enough so that everything is evenly. As you can see, this is always a little bit bigger and kind of bunches up. So what you'll do is you'll stretch that cuff so that it lays flat and that everything is nice and even and flat, and then you'll sew. Stop, pull, readjust, make sure everything is lining up well, and keep going. Stop, readjust, make sure you're grabbing all of those layers and that you're not missing one when you're sewing. A little bit of a tug and sew. You always kind of want to keep a little bit of a tug so that everything is lining up evenly. Not too much of a stretch, just a little bit of a tug. Alright, so now that those cuffs are on, we are going to add the waistband. So it's going to be pretty much the same process as those cuffs. Fold it in half. Line up those edges and sew. Alright, so now that you have sewn that part there, you are going to take it and fold it in half. Okay, grab a clip and mark that side where that seam is, and then you're going to lay it flat and then mark that equal side. Bring those sides in towards the middle, match those up in the middle, and then mark those 2 other sides. So now you'll have those 4 equal corners of this waistband. And then for your sweater, those 2 will be your sides, and then you'll just mark the middle of the front and the middle of the back. Okay, so now take your waistband and you're going to attach it, matching up those sides with each other. So I usually like to line up where my seam is here with one of the side seams, so I'll go ahead and do that. So open up your sweater and place that cuff inside. Line up that seam with one of your side seams. And then just go and just line up your other side with your other side. And then your front piece with one of your front pieces. And then your last 2 sides here. Alright, so now that you have that on there, it's going to look a little like this. As you can see, this is bigger, your cuff is a little smaller. What you do is you kind of give it a little bit of a stretch and then find those middles in between of those sides. And this will make it easier when you're sewing if you have a little bit more clips on there. So just take the two sides and kind of bring all of those layers together and meet them in the middle. Sorry, I know I'm kind of off of the camera, but basically what I'm doing is I'm matching up the middle of all of those sides. And then by stretching it a little bit, as you can see, you'll just need to stretch as you sew. So now I have a few more clips added onto here, and now I'm just going to sew all the way around. And same thing with the cuff, you want to readjust to make sure that you're grabbing all of those pieces. Make sure that you're having a slight tug on it so that all of those pieces lay flat and they're all together. Alright, after that's done, it will look like this. You'll have your cuffs and your waistband on. It will look a little wavy like this because you are pulling, and that's completely normal. Alright, so now for the hood, you're going to grab it and you're going to take those edges and you're going to fold them over about an inch. Like this. Make sure those raw edges are lining up and then clip it. And then you're going to kind of lay it flat, find that seam, and mark the seam too. So now when you lay it flat, those two sides are kind of equal. Okay, so now grab your sweater and you're going to mark the middle of the front and the middle of the back. So like I said earlier, the hood is going to be big. We're going to fix that. So grab your hood. Alright, so you're going to find that middle where the seam is, and you are going to flip it so that raw side is up, and then you're going to put your thumb and kind of fold that over your thumb. It's going to look like an S shape. And then you're going to clip that. Okay, again, grab that, fold it over your finger, and it's going to be like a little sandwiched S there. Okay, so now that you have those two there, it's going to look like a little like this, like if there's darts. Okay, so now kind of match that up to your neck hole here. As you can see, I feel like it looks pretty good there, but you can adjust those folds and make them bigger or smaller so that it fits your neckline the best, which is really nice about doing it this way. So mine needed to be a little smaller, so I'm readjusting and making sure those folds are a little smaller so that it fits a little better. Alright, I feel like that looks a lot better, so now I'm just going to add my hood to my sweater. So find that seam in between those darts or folds and you're going to clip it. And now you're going to add that middle where that seam is by tucking that into the sweater and then clipping that middle with the sweater middle. Okay, and now you're going to clip the front of the hood to the front of the sweater. Okay, so now that those two, the front and the back, are clipped together, what you're going to do is you're going to grab them both and you're going to stretch them. And we're going to stretch until those two necklines match up. So as you can see here, I have two of those layers. You're going to kind of bring them up, and then once they kind of line up and match, you're going to clip it. Alright, same thing to the other side. You're going to stretch, line up those raw edges, make sure that they're matching, and then clip. Alright, so now we have 4 equal corners of both that sweater and neckband. So now we're just going to start clipping in between those 4 corners, and this will just make it easier as we're sewing. So just take 2 of those sides and kind of line up those edges and clip. Again, grab 2 of those clips, line up the middle and clip. Grab 2 of those sides, line up the middle and clip. Okay, so now you should have it look like this, and now we're just going to go ahead and sew like normal around that. And just a little reminder, when you are sewing across these folds, it is going to be thick, so just go slow so that you don't break a needle. And there you have it, your upcycled hoodie. It will look like this, and the back where you did those folds will look a little like this. It will just look like there's some darts there. Nothing too bad. Thanks for watching. See you next time.